everyone, and welcome to Book It. I'm Carol Anne Riddell. Our guest today has been described as a genius for plot. Alafair Burke is the best-selling author of more than a dozen crime novels. She's also a former prosecutor, a law professor, and a dog lover. Alafair, thanks so much for stopping by. We've got a lot to talk about.
Thank you so much for having me.
So your latest book is The Note. It's about 3 women, a girls' weekend in the Hamptons, and a prank that goes horribly wrong. We don't want to give away too much, but can you tell us a little more about how the plot unfolds?
Yeah, it's always hard to talk about a thriller because you don't want to give away the spoilers, but you teed up the setup pretty well. So 3 friends who haven't seen each other in real life for a few years, but are constantly texting with each other, finally set aside some time for a girls' weekend in the Hamptons, and they think it's going to be a weekend of, sun and fun and catching up, and a practical joke goes terribly wrong when somebody steals a parking spot from them. Prime real estate in Sag Harbor, it's hard if you've been out to the Hamptons and try to park in the summer, and someone brazenly steals a spot from them and then smirks at them, and they kind of can't let it go, and they wind up thinking about what kinds of notes they would like to leave on the car, and let's just say one of these notes winds up on the car, and then things happen after that.
Yes, it gets twisty after that.
And they wind up in the middle of a police investigation.
And so I understand that the idea for the book actually came from something that started in your real life?
3 friends of mine and I went on a vacation for a girls' weekend, and someone stole a parking spot and smirked at us. But we just started thinking about, what would we want to say to that person, how would you really leave a note that would mess with someone's head, and then this is what it's like to be a crime writer. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, that's a way to get 3 really interesting characters into a pickle together, right?
Yes.
And then things happen after that.
But you guys didn't actually leave the note.
No,
Right. So in the book, your main character is May, and she is a former prosecutor turned law professor. You're a former prosecutor, law professor.
Yeah.
How much of May is based on you or on your experiences?
May is a very amplified version of my most anxious me, I would say. I mean, May puts a lot of pressure on herself. She holds herself to really high standards. Growing up, she was always the good girl who had to get good grades, and her big brain was sort of her way out of her class, up the ladder, right? So she gets into Harvard, and she becomes a lawyer, and she becomes a prosecutor and a rule follower and a rule enforcer. And so for her to be on the bad end of a police investigation is her most anxious self.
You know, what really struck me about the book, what was interesting to me, is the notion that sort of one small misstep, one kind of wrong decision or questionable decision can maybe lead to disaster. You really capture the unpredictability of life in that way.
Yeah, and I think all 3 characters, part of what has reunited them, they were childhood friends who've kind of moved in and out of each other's lives for years, but what has put them in contact most recently is they were all under the lens of public scrutiny for different reasons.
Yes.
They all had their kind of bad viral moments.
Right.
And I think that adds to their paranoia, so it makes their decision-making a little more tricky for them, because they know that people are going to view them through those lenses and not trust anything they say, and so they might not make the best decisions, and it kind of adds to the paranoia of them, how's this going to look, what are people going to say about us.
And they don't come off as the most reliable narrators either. You don't really know. Anyways, it's very interesting. We won't give more away than that. I'd love to talk about your work a little more broadly. In addition to your standalone novels, you wrote a series with Mary Higgins Clark, Queen of Suspense. She passed away several years ago. I just have to ask, what was that like for you?
Definitely one of those pinch me moments where it's I write in my pajamas, I'm a ragamuffin at home, and when we would meet, that woman was not a ragamuffin. But to be sitting at a table across from her impeccably dressed, writing a book together was definitely
because
I used to read her when I was young. I read her growing up, and so to be able to write several books with her was quite an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah. And speaking of influential writers, your father, best-selling author too, James Lee Burke. So was he a significant influence for you?
Both of my parents made sure that I was a reader. You know, my mother was a librarian, and so she would take me to the library every Saturday to get a new stack of books. And I realized she was doing that to get me out of the house so that my dad could write.
Right.
So she kind of was helping two writers at once in that regard. And then I think just, you know, so many people dream of writing a book, but it does take a certain amount of audacity to try doing it the first time when no one's asked you to do that.
Yes, yes.
And I think to see him do that, like that was just a normal thing to do, that you would sit by yourself all day and put words on paper. Like, I think that for me, it just made it seem like that's a normal thing to do. Because a lot of people don't use those muscles.
Right, and you didn't see, you watched him also struggle earlier in his career before he was a best-selling author, right?
Yes. He definitely had the stick-to-itness of it, because, you know, people would say, what does your dad do? And I'd be like, he's a writer. And they'd be like, what has he published? And I'm like, I don't know if he has, like, I'm not sure. But, you know, he had some very early commercial success before I was born, and then was out of print for over a decade. But he just kept writing and writing and writing. And it, you know, that definitely was a lesson learned of, like, you can't guarantee, just because you're doing the work doesn't mean it's going to be successful, and you have to just kind of stick to it.
Tenacity. Yeah. So I read that you thought originally that you would write just one book. And so how many are you up to now?
I lose count. I think 15 plus 8 with Mary, so 23.
Wow. Yeah. So your prediction on that one was off?
Yeah. It was always, I wrote one book, and then I was lucky enough that multiple editors were interested in it, and my agent called with the good news, and he's like, but they want to know if it's a series. And I said, well, do they want it to be a series? And he goes, I think they're assuming it's a series. And I was like, yes, it's definitely a series, just like I planned it. And I can definitely write another book in a year. And I kind of, you know, fake it till you make it, I guess.
Well, it worked out. So you've said that your fascination with crime started early on when you were growing up in Kansas, because there was a serial killer in the area at that time, the BTK killer.
Yeah.
So what was the impact of that like on you?
If you grew up in Wichita, Kansas, like I did, it was just this overarching thing. Part of your daily routine is when you came home from school, you would check the phone lines, back when we all had landlines, because he would cut the phone cords.
It's so creepy.
Once he was in the house, so that you couldn't call for help. And so the first thing you do is check and make sure that the dial tone was on the phone. And then they thought he got in through the basement, which was super creepy, like to go in your basement when they said that. And so the old houses in Wichita still have bolts on the basement doors.
Wow. Because
everybody kept their basements bolted. And so just, I think, to be young and know that someone out there was, you know, killing women and children and wasn't caught for years. I think it was around that time I was asking my librarian mother for mystery novels. And I think in retrospect, if I'm like gonna play psychiatrist on myself, I think I was looking, like, I liked in crime novels that it's scary in the middle and all this dark stuff is happening, but at the end you get your answers, right? All the pieces fall into place, like kind of find out who's doing it and why. And I think I was kind of looking for the satisfaction of that in mystery novels as a little kid.
That resolution piece of it. Yeah. We mentioned that you are a law professor. You teach criminal law at Hofstra. What is it about crime that maintains your interest so much, like both in your writing and in your teaching?
Yeah, I joke around, I'm all crime all the time. Like, it's like you could set a timer if we go to dinner together. It's like, how long is it going to take her to start talking about something creepy? I do think it came from just wanting those answers as a kid. Like, I am somebody who, like, I want to believe that there's karma. I want to believe there's justice. I want to believe that if you're a good person, good things happen to you. And if you're a bad person, there'll be consequences to that. I mean, I guess there's something simple and appealing about that.
And did your time as a prosecutor really inform, like, the way that you develop a plot or the way that you...
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to teach what I teach or write as a professor the way I write, or write these novels if I hadn't had that time at the district attorney's office in Portland, Oregon, where I worked. But I would say half the years that I was there, I wasn't in court. I was a liaison to the police department, so I actually worked out of a precinct for about 2
Really?
years.
Wow.
And so I think because of that, I kind of know the rhythm of a criminal case. I kind of know, you know, the way police talk to each other is different than the way they talk to a witness, and the way lawyers talk to a judge is different than the way they talk in the hallway. And so I think that helps me a lot with the policey parts of it.
Yeah. You know, even though your books, you know, are thrillers or crime novels, at least to my reading, they feel very relationship driven. And I heard you say in an interview that you like stories that challenge the confines of relationships. So can you tell us a little more what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, I wrote kind of a trilogy of books. It's not really a series, but my books, The Ex, The Wife, and The Better Sister, all have these strong female characters who the conceit of the plot puts them in a role, right? So like the wife has to be the loyal wife to her husband who's accused of all kinds of shenanigans, and the ex of like the guilt you carry, like to someone you treated poorly in the past. She has to go help her ex. And then the better sister has these two sisters who, you know, each think the other one is horrible. And in this book, it's very much about friendships. And I think the way women demand a lot from each other as friends, but also give a lot back into it. And I think these three women have really been leaning on each other recently, and texting 24/7 and talking about everything at all times, like, you know, to the point that May's fiance is like, you talk to those girls more than you talk to me, you know. But then when they're thrown into a police investigation together, they do start to wonder, like, how well do I really know these people? Can I really trust them? Am I really putting myself on the line for these people?
And do you model some of the relationships on your own relationships? I mean, not the police investigation part, but you know, the friendships or the depth of the friendships?
Oh yeah, I definitely, these three, their text threads, they call themselves the cancel club because they all got like sucked up into cancel culture. But I have many, many, many text threads with my friends that all have little names. And, you know, and it is, you know, you talk to your friends about a lot of things, and and it's unconditional love, but unconditional love doesn't necessarily mean that you're a pushover. Like, so these three are willing to call each other out, and some of my favorite scenes to write were ones where they're willing to go there with each other.
I think some of my favorite friends are those who are willing to call me
like sometimes your friend needs a read. And it's your job to give it to them.
That's right. You know, you mentioned The Better Sister, I also read, and that is being made into a series.
Yeah, I'm excited.
With Jessica Biel and Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, they're those two sisters,
I mean, that's really exciting.
Yeah, and they're terrific in it, and the writing is great. I can say that because I didn't write the show. The showrunners did a great job. It's going to be on Amazon Prime.
But what's it like for you as an author to see sort of the words in your brain, the ideas in your head translate on the screen? Does it ring true?
Yeah. I mean, and I've been very lucky with this because it's very true to the book. But, you know, when you take a book and you turn it into 8 episodes of season 1, you're building the world out, and they made really great choices. So I think people who read the book, even if you might know some of the twists already, the decisions that they made in terms of where they took the characters and their exterior lives is really well done. So
that's kind of fun, because sometimes you finish a book and you wish it kept going. So you get a little bit more, maybe? Something like that?
Yes.
Okay, we won't say any more about that. So I have to ask, are you working on anything new at the moment?
Yes, always. So it's a book. Things happen. Someone probably dies.
You're really not giving anything away.
No, but it's about a family. So there's some family relationships in it that are complicated.
We'll look forward to that. Yeah. And do you have any other sort of particular habits around your writing process, Alafair, or like a snack that you gotta have? Anything?
No, I stay in my pajamas and like I'm a ragamuffin. I like to just be very comfortable and chill. I have tried setting a timer so that I have to get up once an hour to at least walk, because when I'm really into it, I'll just kind of forget anything else exists, and then I stand up and I'm like, oh, it's been 4 hours and my legs are locked up. So I can write pretty much anywhere. I've gotten pretty good at, like, I can work in a hotel room or an airport, or you know. So
well, that's kind of a gift, right?
Yeah. Once I'm into it, but getting started, I need those big chunks of hours and silence. I don't understand how anyone can listen to music while they write. That is a mystery to me. I can't have music.
So we sometimes like to do a little flash round here on Book It. 1 sentence answers to 3 quick questions. How do you feel about that? Are you up for it?
I can do it.
Okay, all right. So what is your all-time favorite snack?
Oh, I really like Lipton onion soup dip mix, that chunky soup mix dips with Lay's. I used to be a Ruffle, but now I'm a Lay's wavy person.
Oh my gosh, my husband,
very
is
specific.
Actually his favorite food too.
It's a junky snack, but
I digress.
Yeah.
Okay, what animal would you be if you were an animal?
I would be a border collie.
Okay, and why?
Very specific.
Yeah, that is specific.
They're bossy. They herd people and things. Heard, not hurt. Yeah.
And what is your most dreaded household chore?
I do not like to do laundry, and so I don't do it.
Oh my gosh.
My husband has to do it.
Yes, I don't like laundry either, but especially the folding
I'll just keep
part.
buying underwear. Sorry, too much information. It's like I'm not doing the laundry. It's not going to happen.
That was very fun.
20 years in, he's kind of learned, like, if the laundry's going to get done, he's going to have to do it.
Yeah. All right. Just a last question for you, Alafair. You found so much success and acclaim as an author. What is a piece of advice that you would offer to young writers who are just starting out?
You have to finish the book. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but I think what a lot of people do is they'll rewrite the beginning over and over and over again. You have to just keep going. So on Tuesday, whatever I write, Wednesday, I only read what I wrote Tuesday, and then I keep going. On Thursday, I read what I wrote Wednesday. You just have to keep adding pages till you're done. It's a lot easier to make it better than it is to write it the first time. So write something no matter how bad you think it is, and then fix it.
That is good advice. That's like a lot of things in life, probably.
But a lot of people just don't finish, and it's because every day they start at page 1 again, and you'll have 20 perfect pages, and then
but
not
no
finish.
book.
Yeah.
Alafair, thank you so much for all this time. This was such a great chat. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's been nice to talk to you.
Okay. Now we're going to head to our podcast studio to find out what Isabel Ortiz has for us in Breaking Books.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Breaking Books. I'm Isabel Ortiz, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by author Karla Cornejo Villavicencio to discuss her debut fiction novel, Catalina. Hi Karla, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
This book was so great. I found myself on almost every other page highlighting something that I found funny, that I found heart-moving, heartbreaking. So I would love if you can tell us a little bit about the book, about our main character Catalina, and where we find her at the start of the novel.
At the start of the novel, she is doing an internship at a literary magazine in New York, and she is about to start her senior year at Harvard. It is an important year for her because the novel is placed before DACA, and she's undocumented, and so she has no idea what she's doing after graduation. And so the novel is like that year particularly in her life.
And especially it's her senior year of college. She's at Harvard. There's a lot of pressure with just being in senior, but also with being undocumented. But you were able to pack so much wit and so much energy in about 200 pages. So what was that like? What made you take that way of writing up this Catalina story in such a short, kind of compact book?
Some of my favorite novels have been short. The Great Gatsby, Jamaica Kincaid's books, Salinger's books, and I really related to those writers and to their text because what kept me going was like reading for their voice. I'm not someone who seeks out content about immigrants because so much of it is really traumatic, and I don't want to re-traumatize myself, and so. Seeing myself represented has always meant entering a space of like trauma dumping or trauma watching or something. And so I wanted to write something that spoke about serious themes, that spoke about political vulnerability, but that was funny and that made me feel not necessarily better, but something that was like life affirming and wouldn't make me feel depressed and cynical.
Catalina is Ecuadorian, she's undocumented, and she's at Harvard. And there's this layer of being hyper visible and then also feeling invisible. How do you think that duality affects her behavior and choices that we see play out throughout this book? The hyper visibility and then also feeling invisible.
I think that's a really interesting point you bring up. I think that is the undocumented experience is one of, in order to stay safe, you have to be invisible, but you also have to know when to be visible. And I think that is a negotiation that kids of immigrants, undocumented kids of parents who are undocumented, you grow up with this knowledge of visibility and invisibility. And I think if you're smart, you learn how to play with that. And so I think that there are moments where Catalina tells you so much, But I do want readers to be to not trust that girl, not necessarily. I don't think she's an unreliable narrator, as sometimes people say. But I do think that her motivations are different than the readers. Like, the readers may want her to spill more tea in some areas, but it's strategic when she doesn't.
Yeah, I think as a reader, I was feeling that, like, share more, give me more. But there was also these parts where Catalina is so vulnerable, especially when it comes to the descriptions of her mental health. She really does go through these episodes of depression or really feeling conflicted in her life. And sometimes that shows as self-sabotage. How did you go about writing that aspects of her personality, the intimate portrayals of her mental health and then the self-sabotage?
Well, I wouldn't think it's self-sabotage. I would say it is self-destructive. Okay. I think most people struggle with depression at some point in their lives, or with feeling low, or with feeling like life has disappointed them. And I obviously think that it's important to talk about mental health, and so it wasn't even a question for me. Obviously, this kid is having a hard time, and therefore she has her mood and her behaviors reflect that. So I read a review early on that pointed out that she was like a messy girl with mental health problems, and that is like people with mental health problems are like those are all of Dostoevsky's characters. It isn't a dismissal to say that it's a book about someone who's having issues. It is sexist.
Yeah, it's just one small aspect as well. It's not her whole self. It's not her whole character.
Nothing is her whole character, right? So she's an immigrant, but immigrants have complex lives like all of us do. Even in circumstances like these, it isn't just fear and hiding. There's so much. We're human beings, and so I think I was just honest about fighting for her right to be a human being.
So Catalina in the book, she grows up Catholic. Her grandparents are Catholic, but then they become Jehovah's Witnesses. I would love if you can kind of talk about that, because I feel like that is something that we see often in Latin culture, if you think so, if not.
The religions in the book are cultural touchstones for Catalina in the same way that certain wars in Latin America or certain writers are part of her cultural touchstones. From Catholicism, she gets an idea of aesthetics, I would say like maximalist aesthetics, sensuality. She's interested in the blood and the gore and the prayers. And then Jehovah's Witnesses, she describes their worship space as being more cold and without all of these portraits and statues and crucifixes. And she describes it as like going from wearing gold to wearing sterling silver. But it is still how she's describing them. She's describing the religions as like aesthetics almost. And ones that she like moves through without necessarily holding on to them, which is something she brings up in the book. She leaves the church, and her grandparents don't even try to stop her. And she's like, I thought that these very religious people wanted me to be saved. And then she wonders, is there something about me that they just thought belonged to this world?
And at the end of Catalina, her story doesn't kind of get wrapped up in this perfect bow. You don't really know what's going to happen next. Catalina's even unsure of herself, where her story is going to go. What made you decide to kind of leave it on this ending? I won't spoil it, but on this kind of uncertain ending.
If there's anything you leave the book with, it isn't a story of the American dream that ends happily in graduation and then just drifts off and you never hear about this dreamer again. It is a story, her life is going to continue and it's going to keep being hard. But she has herself, she has her spirit. This spirit has been nurtured by so many immigrants in her community, by so many writers who are dead, some who may have liked her, some who may have hated her. But it's all something that she's putting into her spirit. And I think by the end of the book, you're going to be like, you know what? I think she's going to be fine.
Yeah, and I think too, like writing this perspective shows that not all immigrant stories are the same. So I really appreciate that from this book. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure getting to speak with you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Next up, Uncensored. Author and columnist Linda Stasi is back, and she's got lots to say about what she's reading.
Let me first apologize for what I'm about to say, which means for once I have nothing horrible to say. In fact, this time I come to praise these books, not to bury them. First off is the funny, mind-bending debut novel, The Ministry of Time by Carol Anne. It's a sci-fi time travel rom-com while standing firmly on its own as a satire on life. War, oppression, bigotry, the refugee crisis, climate change, and crooked government. Okay, I know this doesn't sound like 20 million laughs or a romance to cuddle up with, but it is both and thought-provoking as well. The time is London in the very near future. The time is also 1845. London's Ministry of Time has figured out a way to warp time and bring back an interesting range of people just before they died. Each one of these so-called expats is assigned to what they also call a bridge. In other words, a modern human assigned to live with and monitor their every move. The unnamed narrator here, a nose to the grindstone, bureaucratic young woman, is assigned to the newly resurrected Lieutenant Graham Gore. He was a 19th century polar explorer who was last seen walking hundreds of miles on ice to find help for his trapped ship. Get it? Got it? Good. Okay. The expats from all different time periods find themselves in the near future London with cars, computers, cell phones, women in short skirts, traffic lights, and yeah, easy sex. Our unnamed nice girl narrator / bridge crushes on her expat, the reconstituted dashing explorer, and he crushes back on her. Although, in the 19th century, dashing explorers just didn't go around making out with respectable ladies, much to her dismay. What a great book Bradley has created. Not only is she an out-of-the-box new author, but better even, she has a great haircut to boot. The next novel, which features two young women, both with bad haircuts, The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, also features two time periods, 1975 and 1961. The setting is a summer camp and the adjacent property owned by the very wealthy Van Laar family. In 1961, their 8-year-old son disappeared from their vast estate and was not found. Shortly thereafter, a daughter was born. She grows into a rebellious teen who then also disappears, but this time from the camp itself in 1975. There are wonderful characters, such as the junior investigator who's greener than the woods at the camp, a woman whose family has worked for the Van Laars forever and who is now head of the camp. Both the popular and the ostracized kids at the camp, the deeply troubled Mrs. Van Laar, who drinks a bit, well, she drinks a lot, and the Tony socialites who come to the family's annual weekend bash. Moore takes you right to the camp, the lake, and the woods, and into the deepest mystery that spans decades. Who done it? Or did anyone done it? For Uncensored, I'm Linda Stasi.
That wraps up another chapter for us. Thanks so much for watching. A quick reminder to check us out on our new CUNY TV app and on social media. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Carol Anne Riddell. See you next time on Book It.